If you love a good ghost story, buckle up. What you're about to hear are real accounts from people who felt the presence of something not of this world. Paranormal activity, shadowy figures, and moments that defy all logic. Like the story you're about to see, where a mother faces every parent's worst nightmare, watching her home and her daughter fall under the grip of an invisible force that wants something and won't leave without a fight. But before we dive in, make sure you're subscribed so you never miss a terrifying tale. It was the middle of the night, and I was holding Lily in my arms, trying to get her back to sleep when I heard that damn doorbell ring again. But here's the thing. We don't have a doorbell. Never did. And worse, I was the only one who could hear it. It all started a few months back on an ordinary night. I was in the kitchen washing the dishes after dinner when I heard a clear ding-dong, just like those old-fashioned doorbells at Grandma's house. My instinct was to look out the window, but there was no one at the gate. No car parked, no salesman, nothing. Mark was on the couch watching a movie and didn't even budge. I asked if he had heard it, and he just shrugged. "You're crazy, babe. We don't even have a doorbell." At the time, I thought it was all in my head. Stress, fatigue, who knows. But then it started happening more often. Always at night, always when the house was quiet. A solitary ding-dong, as if someone was there on the other side of the door taunting me. And every time I rushed to check, there was absolutely nothing. Mark started to get annoyed when I brought it up again. "Stop it, Carol. You're scaring me for no reason." But he didn't know I had already started noting the days and times on my phone, trying to find a pattern. There wasn't one. It was random. And the worst part? I began to notice that Lily would wake up crying right after the doorbell rang. Coincidence? To this day, I don't know. But Mark, he had his own ghosts. One night I woke up to find him sitting on the bed, staring fixedly at the corner of the room. "There's someone there," he whispered, his voice choked. I looked and saw nothing, just the shadow of the wardrobe. But he swore he had seen a dark figure, too thin, stretched out, as if it were crawling along the floor. And worse, he said he couldn't move. Sleep paralysis, I thought at the time. He had experienced it before, but never like this. So vivid. I tried to calm him down, but deep down, I was skeptical. Were we both going crazy? The house was old, rented, but had never given us trouble. 3 years living there and suddenly these things start happening. It didn't make sense. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Thursday, I remember, because I had just put Lily in her crib after her milk. She fell asleep quickly, and I went to bed, exhausted. I hadn't even properly closed my eyes when I heard her cry. It was the middle of the night. The clock read 12:07. I got up in a panic, picked her up, and she was ice cold. Not normal cold, but that deep chill that seems to come from within. And her little eyes. She wasn't looking at me. She was looking over my shoulder. My blood turned to slush. I turned slowly, holding her tighter. And there was nothing. Just the dark room and that heavy silence. I decided to take her to our bed just to be closer. I laid her between Mark and me, and that's when the bed shook. It wasn't a jolt. It wasn't an earthquake. It was as if someone had lifted the mattress from underneath, with us on top. Mark woke up screaming, and I almost dropped Lily from how fast I jumped. We looked at each other, and I saw on his face the same terror I was feeling. "Did you feel that?" he asked, and I could only nod. Lily started crying again, and I picked her up, ran to the hallway. That's when the kitchen lights started flickering. Click, click, click. That sound of a switch being turned on and off, but there was no one there. Mark came behind me, white as a sheet. "We need to get out of here, now." I already had my phone in hand, calling my mom. My voice was so shaky she didn't even ask, just said, "Come here." Meanwhile, Mark stayed behind, determined to take a look. I almost screamed at him not to, but he insisted. "I need to know if we're going crazy or if there's really something here." I left the house with Lily clinging to my chest, not looking back. I just wanted to get to my mom's house where the lights worked and the doorbells didn't ring by themselves. But one thing I knew. That night wasn't the end. It was just the beginning. I arrived at my mom's house with Lily still trembling in my arms. She opened the door and pulled me inside before I could say anything. "Good heavens, girl, you're as white as a ghost." I could only stammer, "Mom, there's something in our house." While Lily slept on the couch wrapped in a blanket, I told my mom everything. The doorbell that no one else heard, the shadows Mark saw, the bed that moved by itself. She stayed quiet, but I saw her expression change. It wasn't skepticism. It was fear. "This isn't in your head, Carol. You know your grandma always talked about bad energies in old houses." Meanwhile, my phone vibrated. It was Mark. "Carol, you need to listen to me. There's something wrong here." His voice was hoarse as if he had swallowed glass. "I swear I saw the hallway door closed by itself, and now there's a smell, like something burned, but nothing's burning." I felt a chill. "Get out of there, Mark. Now." He hesitated but agreed. "Okay, but tomorrow we need to fix this. We can't live like this." The next day we went back together. In the daylight, the house seemed normal, even pretty with the sun coming through the window, but the air was heavy, as if the walls were holding their breath. Mark looked at me and whispered, "You feel it too, right? Like a pressure?" I felt it. It was as if the house were alive and we were intruders in it. Lily started crying as soon as we entered. Not her normal cry, but that scared cry, like she was seeing something she shouldn't. I picked her up and noticed. She was staring fixedly at the same corner of the room where Mark had seen the shadow. That's when the kitchen lights flickered again. Click, click. This time we saw it. The switch moved by itself. And then we heard a laugh. Low, hoarse, happy, coming from the empty hallway. Mark pulled me by the arm. "Let's go, now." But I knew it wouldn't be that simple. Because that thing knew our names. We left that house as if we had stolen something. We ran to the car with Lily screaming, and I didn't breathe until Mark started the engine and we were 3 blocks away. But even with the sun shining through the window, the cold wouldn't go away. That laugh still echoed in my ears. We went back to my mom's house, and this time Mark didn't doubt anything. He was as scared as I was. "Carol, this isn't normal. It's not sleep paralysis. It's not madness. There's something in that house." My mom came up with the solution right away. "We need to bless that place, and if that doesn't work, you have to move out." The next day we called a priest, a calm, middle-aged man who listened to our story without laughing. He entered the house before us with a rosary in his hand, and I saw the moment he felt it. His face became serious, his eyes scanning the hallway as if he were seeing something we couldn't. "This house has a very heavy energy," he said. "Something got trapped here." He started to pray, to sprinkle holy water. But in the middle of the ritual, Lily's bedroom door slammed shut by itself. Bang. The priest didn't even hesitate. This isn't just a haunting. It's something that wants attention. When he finished, the house felt lighter, but the priest warned us. This might not be enough. Sometimes, certain things get attached to places and to people. He looked at Lily, and my heart froze. Little children are like beacons for these energies. They see. That night, we slept at my mom's house again, but I couldn't close my eyes. Every time Lily moved, I jumped. Mark was the same, staring at the ceiling as if expecting something to descend. The next day, we made the decision. "We're moving," Mark said, "even if we have to rent a room while we look for another place." And that's what we did. In 2 weeks, we were carrying boxes to a new apartment. Far from there, the landlady of the old house didn't even question when we said we were leaving before the lease was up. She almost seemed like she already knew. The last time I set foot in that house was to fetch some change we had left behind, alone, in the daytime, with the sun high. But even then, I felt it. That chill on the back of my neck, that shiver of being watched. And when I closed the door for the last time, I swear I heard very softly, "Carol." I never went back there, but sometimes, in the middle of the night, when Lily wakes up crying for no reason, I wonder if we really escaped, or if we brought a little bit of that house with us. Creepy, huh? What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion here in the comments. Terror doesn't always happen inside the house. Sometimes it waits for you outside, silent, in the middle of the street. The story you're about to see is one of those cases. A simple nighttime walk that turns into a disturbing encounter with the inexplicable. It was the silence that got to me first. That kind of silence that seems to swallow even your own thoughts. I always go out for a walk with Duke, my German Shepherd, after work. My shift ends late, so we're used to taking a stroll around the neighborhood at night. And it's not some abandoned area or anything. It's a quiet, family-friendly place with well-kept houses, lit streets, and folks who still greet each other on the sidewalk. I've never been afraid. Never felt that chill down the spine that they say comes when something isn't right. Until that night. We were at that part of the path where the street makes a gentle curve, near the empty playground. Duke always gets excited, pulling on the leash to sniff the same old posts, but suddenly he stopped. And it wasn't his usual distracted pause. It was like he'd hit an invisible wall. His fur stood on end, and he started making a low noise, almost a whine that I'd never heard before. That's when I saw it. About 10 meters ahead of us, in the middle of the street, there was something. It wasn't a person, not exactly. It was like someone had cut a piece of the fog and shaped it into a man. But it was glowing faintly, like those emergency lights you find on the floor of a movie theater. And the worst part, it was wearing a hat, a wide white hat, like those old farmer hats, but translucent as if made of illuminated smoke. The thing moved slowly, almost in slow motion, as if it were gliding through the air. And the most absurd part? It didn't make a single sound. No footsteps, no wind, nothing. Just the silence of the street, which suddenly seemed to have turned into a vacuum. Duke started trembling, cowering behind me, and I did the stupidest thing possible. "Hey!" I called out as if I were talking to a drunk neighbor. The figure didn't react. It kept gliding forward until it suddenly stopped. And then very slowly, its head began to turn toward us. I saw no face. There was no face, just a lighter smudge in the middle of that light, as if someone had erased the features with an eraser. That's when Duke let out a howl. Never in all the years I've had him has my dog made a sound like that. It was enough. I turned and started walking back home, trying not to run, because something in my head screamed that I shouldn't show fear. But every 3 steps, I looked back. The figure was still there, standing in the middle of the street, that white hat floating under the lamplight. And even though I couldn't see any eyes, I knew it was staring at me. When we finally turned the corner and lost sight of it, Duke was still bristling, panting. I got home and locked the door behind me as if I'd escaped a mugger. And now, hours later, sitting on the couch with Duke glued to my feet, I wonder, what the hell was that? A hallucination? Lack of sleep? But then I look at Duke, who still has his ears down, and I know he saw it too. Dogs don't make up stuff like that. And the worst part is, no matter how much I try to find an explanation, a reflection, a trick of the light, anything, nothing makes sense. Because that thing seemed to know we were there. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept tossing and turning on the mattress, my ears sharp for any unusual sound. Duke didn't relax either. He stayed huddled at the foot of the bed, his eyes fixed on the window, as if expecting that thing to appear again. Every now and then he would growl softly, almost a warning. And me. I felt like a scared old man, checking the lock 3 times before lying down. The next day the sun came out strong, and that night scene seemed like a distant nightmare. I even tried to convince myself it had just been a trick of the light, a tired mind playing tricks. But then I remembered Duke, that howl, and the chill came back. I decided to investigate. I went back to the spot in daylight like some bad movie detective. Nothing. No traces, no broken posts that could have caused strange reflections. Just the usual asphalt, the empty playground, the wind rustling the trees. I even asked Mrs. Martha, the neighbor who sits on her porch all day, if she had seen anything strange on the street. "Here?" She laughed, adjusting her glasses. Only living folks' business, son. But at night, the fear returned. I didn't want to go out, but Duke needed his walk. I took a deep breath, grabbed a flashlight and a pocket knife. Yes, I knew it wouldn't do any good against a ghost, but it was better than nothing. We took a different route, avoiding that cursed curve. For a few days, it was quiet. No white hat, no silence from beyond. Until, on a Wednesday, Duke stopped again in the middle of the street. This time we were near the small park. He didn't howl, but his tail was between his legs, and his muscles were as hard as stone. That's when I felt it, that feeling of being watched. It wasn't paranoia, no, it was as if the air had become heavier, sticking to the skin. I looked around slowly. Nothing, just the houses, the parked cars, the full moon up above. But then, I heard it. A whisper. So low I almost thought it was the wind, but there was no wind. It was a hoarse, drawn-out voice, as if coming from far away. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was clear. It was a call. Duke started pulling hard on the leash, wanting to get away. Me too. But something made me look back toward that cursed curve. And there it was. Farther away this time, almost at the end of the street. The same luminous silhouette, the same white hat floating. But now, it was waving. A slow, inviting motion, as if it wanted me to come over. My blood turned to ice. Duke nearly snapped the leash trying to run, and I didn't think twice. We got out of there as if the devil himself were behind us. Getting home, we locked everything. Duke hid under the table, and I stood looking through the gap in the curtain, expecting to see that thing on the street. Nothing. But one thing I know. That wasn't a hallucination. Not twice. Not with the dog reacting the same way. And now, every time it gets dark, I wonder if it will appear again. And if next time, I'll be dumb enough to follow that wave. What a fright. And when the shadow isn't just following you, but watching from above, as if it knows you've seen it. That's exactly what happens in the next story, where a mysterious figure makes a gesture impossible to ignore. The sky was that shade of burnt orange that only appears when the sun is just about to hide behind the mountains. We were heading to Uncle Charlie's farm, a remote place full of old trees, and a silence that sometimes could give you chills. I was in the back seat of the car, my head resting against the window, watching the houses blur past as the winding road snaked along. That's when I saw it. On the roof of one of those abandoned houses, a shadow moved. It wasn't a cat, nor a swaying branch. It was something tall, thin, with arms that stretched in a way that wasn't human. It was dancing. There was no music, no rhythm, just strange movements, as if it were writhing in the air. My heart raced, but I couldn't look away. It was hypnotic, but at the same time, wrong. And then, out of nowhere, the shadow stopped. It turned its head, or at least what I thought was its head, toward me. I felt a chill down my spine, the kind that warns you, something's not right here, and then it did something that made my blood run cold. It leaned forward as if bowing, a greeting, just for me. Dad. I swallowed hard, trying to keep my voice steady. There's something on the roof of that house. My dad glanced quickly in the rearview mirror, but we were already passing by. Where, son? It's gone now. There was something, a shadow. My mom turned to me with that don't start look. It was probably just a bird or the wind blowing something. But I knew it wasn't. I had seen too much. The way that thing moved, how it saw me. It wasn't my imagination. And the worst part? The feeling that it was still there even as the car moved far away, watching me somehow. The rest of the trip was silent. I kept looking out the windows, expecting to see that lanky figure dancing on top of some house, some post. But nothing. Just the dark road and the car's headlights cutting through the night. When we arrived at the farm, Uncle Charlie was already waiting for us on the porch, a lantern in his hand. The light flickered, casting shadows that crawled along the wooden walls. I couldn't stop thinking about that bow. Why did it do that? What did it want? You look like you've seen a ghost. Uncle Charlie laughed, patting my shoulder. I forced a smile, but my throat went dry. If only he knew. The night at the farm was always full of noises. Crickets, the wind in the trees, sometimes a dog barking far away. But this time, every sound seemed different, louder, more intentional, as if something was crawling through the backyard just out of the light's reach. I lay down in bed but couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling, imagining that shadow writhing, dancing. And then, very softly, a sound came. Scratching. Right below my window. My body froze. It was just a possum, or a cat, right? But then it came again. Scratch, scratch, and then laughter, thin like a hoarse whisper that slipped through the glass. I shrank back, pulling the sheet up to my chin. It wasn't my mind playing tricks. Someone, or something, was out there. And it had found me again. I didn't move a muscle. My breath was stuck in my chest, and my heart was beating so hard it felt like it was going to come out of my mouth. The laughter stopped, but the air remained heavy, as if the room had shrunk. I lay there, listening. Nothing. Just the wind gently hitting the window. It was just the wind, I tried to convince myself. Just the sound of the house settling. But then, tap. Something hit the glass. Slowly, almost unwillingly, I turned my head to look. The curtain swayed, letting in a bit of moonlight, and that's when I saw it. A hand. Too long, too thin, with fingers that stretched as if they were made of rubber. It slid across the glass, scratching the surface slowly, as if testing its strength. My blood turned to ice. It had come for me. I jumped out of bed and ran to my parents' room, almost tripping in the dark. I pounded on the door hard. "There's something out there." My dad woke up startled, but when he opened their window, there was nothing. Just the quiet night. "You must have dreamed it," he said, rubbing his face. But I knew what I had seen. The next day, the farm seemed normal. The sun high, the birds singing. Everything as it always was. Until Uncle Charlie mentioned over coffee. Someone messed with the shed last night. The door was open, and all the tools were scattered. My parents thought it was some animal, but I couldn't forget that hand on the glass. The dancing shadow, the bow. It had followed me. I decided to investigate. I grabbed an old lantern from Uncle Charlie and went to the shed. The air inside was musty, full of dust floating in the beam of light. And then, in the darkest corner, I saw it. Marks on the floor, footprints, but not from an animal. They were long, thin, as if someone had walked on their tiptoes, and in the middle of them, a dark, sticky stain. I smelled it and almost threw up. The smell of something dead. Something moved behind me, a quick shadow disappearing among the shelves. The lantern fell to the floor, plunging everything into darkness. I stood in the dark, hearing only my own ragged breathing, and then a whisper, "You saw me." I ran out without looking back. That night, I convinced my parents to lock all the windows. They thought it was an overreaction, but they didn't argue. I didn't tell them about the shed, or the voice, but when I turned off the light in my room, I looked at the window again, and there it was, the shadow, standing outside, still, as if it were waiting. This time, it didn't dance. It just smiled. How weird. Some presences just refuse to be ignored. And worse, sometimes they decide to tag along with you. Like in the story that's coming up, where a vacation retreat turns into a nightmare that insists on continuing even after the trip. But before we go on with the story, if you've made it this far, it means you're enjoying our stories, so go ahead and hit that like button to let YouTube know you enjoy this kind of content and don't miss any more horror stories. The first night in that house was the only one we slept peacefully. We didn't know it yet, but something was watching us from the moment we stepped into the room. It was an old house, the kind families rent every summer to gather everyone together. Uncles, cousins, grandparents. We ended up in a secluded corner in a tiny room that seemed forgotten by time. The walls were thick, the floor creaked for no reason, and the air always had a musty smell, as if the place lacked light. But the worst part wasn't the room itself. It was what else was inside. On the second day, I noticed something strange. I would turn in bed and feel a chill that came from nowhere. It wasn't wind. It wasn't a draft. It was as if someone was breathing right near my neck, but when I opened my eyes, there was nothing. Up to that point, I could have chalked it up to travel fatigue. But then my girlfriend started having nightmares. She had never talked in her sleep before, but that night she began murmuring things that made no sense. "Not now," she said, her voice hoarse, almost irritated. I gently shook her, and she woke up startled, remembering nothing. The next day, I asked if she had dreamed of anything, and she only said she felt like someone was arguing with her in the dream. Something insisted that the room was theirs. Then came the night I saw the bed sink. We were lying down, almost asleep, when I heard a creak in the mattress. I didn't think much of it until I felt the weight shifting, as if someone had sat on the edge of the bed. When I looked, there was an indentation in the mattress, pressed down, as if something invisible was there, resting. My blood ran cold. I didn't want to believe it, but there was no denying it. Besides us, there was something else in that room. My girlfriend was sleeping deeply, so I didn't say anything. I just lay there, staring at the mark on the mattress until slowly, it disappeared, as if the weight had lifted. But the feeling that we were being watched didn't go away. On the contrary, it seemed that now we knew they were there. And worse, they knew that we knew. In the following days, her nightmares got worse. She would wake up screaming, covered in cold sweat, and once she swore she saw a shadow in the corner of the room, just standing there, watching. I saw nothing, but I felt it. That chill on the back of my neck, the pressure in the air as if something was testing our courage. Until, on the last night there, I decided to confront it. Alone in the room while she was in the bathroom, I looked into the void and spoke softly. "If there's someone here, show yourself. Or better yet, leave." Silence was the only answer. For a moment, I thought I had imagined it all, but then the doorknob moved on its own, and I realized I had made a mistake, because some things don't want conversation, they just want a scare. The door didn't open, the doorknob just stopped moving as if whoever was on the other side had given up, but I knew there was no one there. My girlfriend was still in the bathroom and the rest of the family had gone to sleep. I kept staring at the door, expecting something to happen, but the room went quiet in a way that felt wrong. That's when I heard a whisper. I couldn't make out the words, but it was as if someone was breathing right near my ear, murmuring something fast and low. My body froze. It wasn't my imagination. The air suddenly turned icy, and I felt that something was there, right beside me, even though I couldn't see it. The bathroom door opened and the hallway light flooded the room. My girlfriend walked in, and at that moment, the whispering stopped. She looked at me and asked, "Is everything okay? You look pale." I didn't know what to say. How could I explain that something invisible had been talking to me? I decided not to scare her and just mumbled that I had heard a strange noise. But the night wasn't over with us yet. We lay down again, and this time I couldn't sleep. I kept looking into the darkness, waiting for the bed to sink again or to hear that whisper. My girlfriend fell asleep quickly, but I swear that at some point, something brushed its fingers against my foot. It was quick, light like a spider's touch. I pulled my leg close to me and almost screamed, and then the bed shook. It wasn't a normal movement like someone turning over. It was strong, as if two hands had gripped the edge and pushed. We jolted with the mattress. My girlfriend woke up startled and asked if it had been an earthquake. I didn't answer, because at that moment, I saw. In the wardrobe mirror, reflected in the dim light, there was a shadow behind us. It wasn't an illusion. It was a dark figure, standing, with its arms stretched out as if holding the bed. I turned quickly, but there was nothing there. Just emptiness. My girlfriend sat up in bed and asked what was happening. I didn't want to scare her, but I couldn't ignore it anymore. I spoke softly. "There's something in this room." She didn't laugh or doubt. She just looked at me and said, "I know." That's when I realized she had known for longer than I had. And that thing wasn't going away anytime soon. We went home the next day, but the feeling that something had come with us was impossible to ignore. The dogs, who always came running to celebrate our return, stood still in the hallway, staring fixedly at nothing behind me. Their fur stood on end, and one growled low as if seeing an intruder. I knew what or who they were looking at. That night, I decided to try communicating again. This time, I wasn't arrogant. Alone in the room, I took a deep breath and spoke calmly. "You are not welcome here. This house is ours. If you need help, I can try, but you can't stay." The air turned cold instantly. An icy current ran up my spine, and I felt a response, not in words, but in weight. Something was angry. The lamp flickered, and the dog started barking wildly from the other side of the door. My hand sweated on the switch as I tried to turn on the main light. It didn't work. That's when I heard it. 3 knocks on the wall, clear, firm, as if someone were on the other side. My heart raced. It was a challenge, a provocation. I took a deep breath and forced myself not to run. "Enough," I said firmly. "You don't scare me. You can't stay." Silence. And then, the wardrobe door opened on its own, slowly creaking, as if someone were running their fingers along the wood. My knees trembled, but I didn't break eye contact. "Leave." The light came back on suddenly. The air warmed. The dog stopped barking. And the feeling of presence, that weight on my shoulders I had even grown accustomed to, simply vanished. My girlfriend came into the room shortly after, and I didn't need to explain anything. She looked at me and smiled, relieved. "It's gone," she said as if she knew. We slept well that night, the first time in weeks. To this day, I don't know if that thing truly gave up or is just waiting. But I learned one thing. The unknown exists, and sometimes it listens when we speak. The key is not being afraid to confront it and knowing when to ask for help. And if it ever comes back, this time I'm ready. What a horror. What did you think of the story? What rating from 0 to 10 would you give it? Leave your opinion here in the comments. That supermarket was like any other. Too many fluorescent lights, the smell of fresh bread mixed with the artificial aroma of cleaning products, and that background music no one pays attention to. My son, Luke, and I were in our usual routine, list in hand, a slightly wobbly cart, him complaining that he wanted to go to the candy aisle first. But everything changed when we passed by the entrance. There was a man there. Not your typical homeless guy, the kind you might recognize after a while. No, this one was different. He was leaning against the wall near the automatic doors, hands outstretched as if holding something invisible. His hair was greasy, stuck to his face and his eyes. God, his eyes didn't blink. They stayed fixed, glazed over whoever passed by as if he were seeing something behind us. Luke squeezed my hand tightly. "Mom," he whispered, and I felt his little fingers ice cold. I glanced at the man, trying not to draw attention, but I'd already noticed he wasn't taking his eyes off Luke. It wasn't a look of pity or hunger. It was something off, as if he were telling the child something without opening his mouth. "Come on, son," I said, pulling him inside, trying to hide the tightness in my chest. But Luke wouldn't move. He was paralyzed, staring at the man as if he'd seen a creature coming out of the darkness. That's when the stranger smiled. Not a smile of gratitude or relief. It was a wide smile, full of yellowed teeth, and the corners of his mouth stretched too far, as if the skin might tear. I threw some coins into his cup without thinking, just to get away. The man didn't even look at the money. He kept staring at Luke, and then he blinked. But it wasn't a normal blink. His eyelids closed slowly as if they were stuck, and when they opened again, his eyes were white. Not blind white, but milk white. No iris, no pupil, just white. Luke let out a little scream and threw himself against me. I almost tripped over the cart but managed to hold him. When I looked again, the man seemed normal, or at least as normal as a scary homeless man could be. His eyes were dark again, his posture slumped. But that smile was still there, only smaller, as if he knew something we didn't. "Let's go, Mom," Luke whined, and this time I didn't argue. We quickly entered the supermarket, but even with the doors closing behind us, I still felt that gaze on my back, as if he were still there, laughing silently. Inside the store, Everything seemed too normal. People pushing carts, employees restocking shelves, kids crying for candy. But Luke didn't let go of my hand for a second. He stayed glued to me, looking back every now and then, as if expecting to see the man there among the aisles. I tried to convince myself he was just a drug addict, someone who had lost touch with reality. But those white eyes, that wasn't normal. And the worst part? I knew Luke had seen it too. He wasn't going to forget it anytime soon. And neither was I. We tried to do our shopping, but every time someone passed by us, Luke flinched. Even the cashier, a friendly old man, made him tense. "It was just a weird guy, son," I said, trying to calm him. But deep down, I didn't even believe my own words. Because some things you just know aren't human. And that man, he wasn't just looking. He was seeing something we couldn't see. We left the supermarket faster than usual. The bags weighed heavy in my hands, but I couldn't feel it. I just wanted to get to the car and leave. Luke was still quiet, that strange silence kids have when they're truly scared. I glanced at the supermarket entrance, half unwillingly, and my blood ran cold. The man was still there, but he wasn't the same hunched figure begging for change. He was standing upright, arms stretched out at his sides, like a soldier at attention. And the worst part? He was looking directly at us, that wide smile again, his cracked lips stretching until they seemed about to split. "Luke, don't look back," I said softly, squeezing his hand tightly. But it was too late. My son turned his head, and I heard the air leave his lungs in a low whimper. The man slowly raised a hand, as if waving, but his fingers twisted in an unnatural way, bones cracking, joints turning the wrong way. And then he pointed at Luke. Not at me, not at the car, directly at my son. That's when panic truly set in. I threw the bags to the ground, picked Luke up. He was already 8. But at that moment I didn't think about the weight, and started running toward the parking lot. My heart was beating so hard I could barely hear Luke crying on my shoulder. When I finally reached the car, I almost dropped the keys from my trembling hands. I looked back one last time, and the man had vanished. No, not vanished. He was closer. Now in the middle of the parking lot, between 2 cars standing in front of us. Still with that smile, still with the white eyes. "Close your eyes, son," I screamed, shoving the key into the ignition. The engine roared, and I reversed so fast I almost hit the car behind me. I didn't care. I just wanted distance. On the road, I looked in the rearview mirror. Nothing. Still, the back of my neck tingled, as if something were breathing in the back seat. Luke was huddled in his seatbelt, eyes full of tears. He was coming, Mom," he whispered. I saw him walking, but his feet weren't moving. I swallowed hard, because I had seen it too. The man wasn't walking. He was gliding, as if someone were dragging him by an invisible thread. The rest of the drive was silent. Luke didn't let go of his stuffed bear that he had in the car, and I didn't take my eyes off the road. But every shadow seemed darker, every figure in the corner of my eye seemed to move. When we finally got home, I locked the door and checked all the windows. Luke burrowed under the blanket and didn't want dinner. I sat in the kitchen, staring at nothing, trying to find an explanation that wasn't... No. I knew what I had seen, and Luke did too. But the night wasn't over yet, and I didn't know how far that man, that thing, was willing to go. The night was long. Luke only fell asleep when it was already dawn, and even then, clinging to my arm as if I would disappear if he let go. I didn't sleep. I stayed there, listening to every sound in the house. The wind hitting the window, the creaking of the floor. Even the hum of the fridge seemed wrong. In the morning, I thought it had just been a scare. A thing of our imagination, you know? Until Luke looked at me with those scared eyes and asked, "Is he coming back, Mom?" I didn't know what to answer, but the universe answered for me. That afternoon, coming back from school, Luke started crying out of nowhere. I squeezed his hand and asked what was wrong. He just pointed to the other side of the street. The man was there, not smiling, not making faces, just standing. Standing in the middle of the empty sidewalk with the same white eyes staring at us. This time he was clean, Whole clothes, combed hair as if he had dressed up for a meeting. But the way he looked at Luke was even worse. It was hunger. I almost ran someone over crossing the street to get away. At home, I locked everything again, but this time I called my brother, the only one who wouldn't think I was crazy. He came right away with an old rosary and a bottle of holy water our grandma left. "It's not drugs. It's not madness," he said after hearing everything. "It's something else. And it has chosen Luke." We prayed, put salt on the doors, hung the rosary on his headboard, and for a while it seemed to have worked. Until one night I woke up to Luke's room freezing cold. He was sitting on the bed, looking at the darkest corner of the room, and there, leaning against the wall, was him, now with his skin starting to peel like old paper and a smell of decay filling the air. This time he spoke, just one word, in a whisper that came from all corners at once. "Come." That's when I realized he didn't want to scare us. He wanted to take Luke. And if it hadn't been for the rosary that started burning on my son's neck at that moment, maybe he would have succeeded. The man, the thing, vanished with a scream that came from somewhere not of this world. But I know he hasn't given up. Because even today, sometimes, I wake up in the middle of the night and see Luke sitting on the bed, looking into the darkness. And if I listen closely, you can hear someone whispering outside, calling him. And that's the thing. Sometimes what seems like just a weird blip in your daily routine becomes a memory that never leaves you. If you've made it this far, these stories have gotten under your skin too. So if this kind of content makes you think, gives you chills, or leaves you with that nagging feeling, hit subscribe. There's always new stories here that get to you. Oh, and drop a comment below. I stayed till the end. That way I know you stuck with me through every second. And seriously, that means everything. Throw a like if any of these stories gave you the heebie-jeebies. The connection we build here is what makes it all worth it. Hey, there's a video right over there that perfectly keeps the vibe going. Click and join me, just be careful what might be watching you while you do.